This not-so-great-looking girl whose hair looks like a broom worked as a waitress in a beer shop. The customers weren't too kind, constantly comparing her to the other, much more attractive waitress. Ha-jin, despite feeling like she was losing a battle with her reflection, still forced a smile for them. After her shift, she raced to her best friend's birthday party. Her friend, the hot baddie Hari, was the complete opposite of her. Beautiful, hot, the kind of girl who could make the sun look dull. Despite their differences in looks, their friendship remained as solid as a rock. The Dwayne Johnson. At the party, disaster struck. Hari slipped and fell right into the pool. The nearby guys, fearless of the chilly water, dove right in to rescue her. In all the chaos, Ha-jin got accidentally pushed into the pool, and despite her best efforts to stay afloat, she sank deeper. No one noticed, but luckily, the pool wasn't deep, so she managed to drag herself out. Watching Hari being helped out of the water, Ha-jin quietly climbed out and, as usual, felt invisible like Drax. It was like she wasn't even there. Not wanting to stick around for the pity party, she left. On her way home, she felt a mix of sadness and emptiness. She couldn't even cry. No tears left. Life wasn't easy for someone who didn't meet society's beauty standards, but no one knew the whole story. She used to be the prettiest girl in school, the one who made boys sigh and dream about her. Back in middle school, Ha-jin was everyone's crush, but she never let it go to her head. One day, a new fatso cow hog kid named Sun Jun joined her class. He was chubby, and the class wasted no time in making him the butt of their jokes. But Ha-jin couldn't just stand there and watch because she is the main character of this K-drama. She was the one who stepped in, shooing away the bullies and comforting him. Sun Jun had a thing about rain, ever since his mom passed away on a rainy day. When it rained, he panicked and cried out for her. Ha-jin didn't flinch. She covered him with her shirt, plugged headphones in his ass, in his ear, and calmed him down. From that moment, they became the best of friends, but life pulled them apart when my dude Sun Jun had to move abroad with his dad. Before he left, he gave Ha-jin a kiss and promised they would meet again. Fast forward 20 years, and Ha-jin was having a rough day at work. Late for an interview, she rushed into an elevator. But of course, the elevator had to get overloaded when a gorgeous girl entered after her. The girl, without a word, made Ha-jin step out. But just then, a mysterious person pushed the girl out and waved Ha-jin back in. Thanks to that, she made it to the interview in time. During the interview, the questions mostly centered on her work history. Why had she never stayed at any job for more than 3 months? Ha-jin didn't hesitate. She said her boss got arrested, or the company went bankrupt. Her honesty cracked the interviewer up, and the other candidates couldn't stop laughing. She didn't need a crystal ball to guess the result. Later that night, as she was still waiting for the email response, it finally came. But it wasn't from the company. It was from Sun Jun, the chubby, fat, ugly guy from her past. She couldn't believe it. She was over the moon. The next day, she rushed to the meeting spot. There, she saw a familiar, chubby figure sitting down eating. Excited, she ran up, slapped him on the back, and called out his name. She held his hand, telling him he hadn't changed a bit. But when he looked up, there was a total blank stare. "Who the fuck are you, you ugly ass?"
What?
He asked. "Do we know each other?" Just as Ha-jin realized she'd made a mistake, her phone rang. Sun Jun was calling. At that moment, a handsome dude appeared in front of her, answering the same phone. Talk about timing. What left Ha-jin in complete shock was that every word Sun Jun spoke seemed to match the voice on her phone. The chubby friend she remembered had now turned into a hot and handsome man with no beard, and she was frozen in place, unable to comprehend this dramatic transformation. He waved at her. Didn't he recognize her? But instead of greeting her, he walked right past and greeted the beautiful girl behind her. In his memory, Ha-jin was the beauty everyone admired. How could he possibly associate her with this curly-haired, ugly duckling now? Ha-jin retreated to a corner, watching Sun Jun with confusion and disbelief. Later, she returned home in a daze, only to bump into Hari. Seeing her best friend's downcast face, Hari, who knew Ha-jin better than anyone, immediately understood what was going on. Ha-jin admitted she didn't feel worthy of Sun Jun anymore. In his eyes, she had always been the beautiful, admired girl. And if he saw her like this, he would be disappointed. No matter how much Hari tried to console her, Ha-jin couldn't shake off her feelings of inadequacy. But not wanting to keep Sun Jun waiting too long, Ha-jin came up with a bold plan. She asked Hari, the rich and beautiful friend, to pretend to be her and meet Sun Jun. Here is the dumbass K-drama lead for you. Hari, without hesitation, agreed. She walked up to Sun Jun with confidence, and when he saw her, his face lit up with a smile. He called out Ha Jin's name and pulled her into a warm, intimate hug. Ha Jin could only watch them from afar, her heart heavy. She followed them to the restaurant where Sun Jun, still thinking Hari was Ha Jin, couldn't stop gazing at her with admiration. He asked about her work, and Ha Jin had already coached Hari on the answers. But when unexpected questions came up, Hari didn't know what to say. Ha Jin, hiding behind them, desperately tried to help with body language, but Hari didn't catch on. Despite the awkward moments, Sun Jun remained oblivious. Thanks to Ha Jin's subtle guidance, Hari managed to answer all the questions about their childhood, stories only Ha Jin and Sun Jun shared. Sun Jun thanked Ha Jin for bringing light into his life, for never abandoning him, and for helping him regain hope. Although he was speaking to Hari, Ha Jin's heart ached with each word. At the end of the meal, Hari followed the plan and told Sun Jun she would be leaving for abroad the next day and wouldn't be able to see him again. Sun Jun, disappointed at this sudden goodbye, because he has not clapped her yet, he ran to a nearby store and returned with a small gift box. He handed it to her, wiped his hands clean, and reached out for a handshake. But then suddenly, he pulled her into a tight, lingering hug. Ha Jin, watching from the shadows, felt the pang of loss deep in her ass. Back at home, Hari opened the gift box. It was an umbrella. Ha Jin wasn't surprised. She knew exactly what it meant. When they were children, she had used her raincoat to shield Sun Jun from the rain, promising to always protect him. Now, it seemed Sun Jun wanted to be that person for her, but Ha Jin couldn't bring herself to accept this happiness. She sat down at her computer, hesitated for a long moment, and then deleted Sun Jun's email, erasing him from her life. The next morning, Ha Jin woke up to an unexpected email. She had passed the interview. She was no longer just another person lost in the crowd. Full of pride, she went to work, determined to give her all. But when she arrived at the company, she was shocked. Her deputy editor would be none other than Sun Jun. Fate had woven their paths together again, and there was no escaping it. Ha Jin was so startled that she covered her mouth and tried to hide outside, avoiding his gaze. She sneaked a peek through the glass door, and though Sun Jun didn't recognize her, seeing him still startled her. Overwhelmed, she quickly turned and fled the scene. Ha Jin nearly had a heart attack when she ran into the elevator and saw Sun Jun inside. In her panic, she had mistaken someone else for him earlier. The elevator's sudden blackout and stillness made her even more nervous, causing her to knock frantically on the door. Sun Jun, upset, pulled her back and read her name tag out loud. Ha Jin, the ugly ass. For a moment, Ha Jin thought he had finally recognized her, but instead, my dude simply wanted her to calm down. He assumed it was just a coincidence. After all, they only shared the same name. With her first love standing right there, Ha Jin pressed herself into a corner of the elevator, practically sticking to the wall. Sun Jun was confused, thinking his employee had mental issues. Ha Jin tried to make herself invisible, even holding her breath in an attempt to not draw attention to herself. But the more she tried, the more unsettled Sun Jun became. She held her breath for so long that she nearly farted. When she collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, Sun Jun misunderstood her distress, thinking she had a fear of the dark. He then did what Ha Jin used to do for him when they were children. He handed her headphones playing a KSI's song, hoping it would ease her nerves. Ha Jin's heart skipped a beat. She longed to tell him that she was the one who had always comforted him with this song, the person he had wished for all along. But she couldn't bring herself to do it because the K-drama has more upcoming episodes. When the music stopped and the elevator doors opened, Sun Jun walked out without a second thought, while Ha Jin remained paralyzed, struggling to calm herself. Her first day at the fashion magazine officially began, and as fate would have it, she and Sun Jun were now working together. Despite her efforts to avoid him, she couldn't escape. Ha Jin worked hard, enthusiastically wiping the model's sweat, but in her hurry, she didn't notice the shoe prints she had left all over the shooting floor. Sun Jun, noticing, reprimanded her sharply. She quickly apologized, but he looked at her disdainfully and criticized her unprofessionalism, making Ha Jin furious. Still, she could only bow her head and stay silent, her desire to run away stronger than ever. Thankfully, the lizard-face editor-in-chief arrived, and everyone's attention shifted to her. Ha Jin thought maybe her misfortune was over, but to her horror, the editor-in-chief criticized her curly broom hair, calling it a feather duster with no aesthetic appeal. Ha-jin explained patiently that her hair was naturally curly, not a result of a perm, but Sun-jun overheard. The mention of her curly hair brought back a memory from years ago, when he had learned the secret on a rainy day. Ha-jin had told him, "If my hair gets wet, it'll turn curly again. That's why I hate the rain. So, how do you bathe?" Even as Ha-jin tried to defend herself, the editor-in-chief continued to insult her, dismissing her outfit as outdated and inappropriate for someone working in fashion. Ha-jin remained silent, her head lowered, accepting the harsh words since the lizard-faced woman is 100% right here. It seemed like she was only good for heavy labor at the company, having no beauty to speak of. By the end of the day, Ha-jin was exhausted and frustrated. As she vented her anger to Hari in the car, she felt suffocated. But just as she looked up to get some fresh air, Sun-jun's car passed by. However, before anything could happen, someone intervened. Back at his empty house, Sun-jun missed Ha-jin and decided to send her a letter. Ha-jin, startled, immediately turned to Hari for help. Without hesitation, Hari sent Sun-jun a photo of herself enjoying her European travels, making it seem like she was far away. Reading her message, Sun-jun smiled, content with the lust of his first love. When he returned to the office as the deputy editor, he was a different person. He became extremely strict, urging his team to come up with decoration ideas for the company's 69th anniversary. Using a mini hourglass, he gave them a strict time limit for each response. No matter what ideas they gave, he wasn't satisfied with any of them. Each word Sun-jun spoke seemed to weigh heavily on the employees. When he stomped his foot, it was like an earthquake. Ha-jin was so startled, she didn't even realize when he called on her. When she finally spoke, she fumbled, wasting time. "Is this a meeting or a trap?" she thought. Sun-jun wasted no time in kicking her ass out. His scoldings made her feel like she was in an emotional weightlifting contest. "Am I really so forgettable that he doesn't even care about me?" she wondered. During the meeting, employees worked passionately on their magazine ideas, only for Sun-jun to tear them apart like a dog with a chew toy. Whispers of frustration filled the room. "He just got back from the US, they grumbled. "What does he know about Korean fashion?" They might as well have been whispering, "Is he even real?" But when Sun-jun left the office, he surprised everyone by putting his card in front of them. "Go out, have fun, I'll cover it," he said. The employees blinked in confusion. Wait, is this a trap or a free dinner? In truth, Sun-jun wasn't being dismissive or arrogant. He wasn't trying to make enemies. He was just trying to save the magazine from going down faster than a sinking ship. Most, Korea's largest fashion magazine, was on the brink of being shut down. The US headquarters had already made the call. Sun-jun's mission? To save the branch by pushing it to the top in a month. No pressure, right? Meanwhile, Ha-jin was still stuck doing menial tasks. One day, she accidentally bumped into Sun-jun, and before she could process it, she ended up in his arms. Her heart raced like it was running a marathon. She stammered a thank you, but before she could regain her balance, he let go of her hand, sending her to the floor. He turned to walk away, coldly remarking, "You've got problems with your mind and your eyes." Ha-jin was done. She earned her spot at the company with her own merits, but this guy made her feel like she had just failed a pop quiz. Sun-jun continued to criticize everything. Her work, her speech, even her ability to breathe correctly. Ha-jin realized he wasn't even paying attention to her skills. He only noticed her because they shared the same name as his noble first love. The next day, Ha-jin arrived at the company without fear and boldly criticized her boss in front of her colleagues. She said he wasn't handsome, his personality was odd, and his face was always frowning. So it was true that he didn't have friends. Like scratching an itch, Ha-jin continued to talk badly about my dude, unaware that Sun-jun was standing right behind her. When she turned around and saw his face, she screamed. Her colleagues, who had been chatting with her, immediately avoided him and left Ha-jin alone with the devil. Sun-jun, unfazed, grabbed the documents from under her ass and dusted them off before walking away. Later, he was at a high-end hotel discussing business with his partner when he unexpectedly found out that Hari also worked there. He grabbed her hand and asked why that bitch hadn't already studied abroad. Hari quickly hugged Sun-jun to hide her name tag, but her colleague picked it up. "You called her? You're the director?" he asked. Realizing she couldn't lie anymore, Hari admitted the truth. She had traveled to Europe but stayed in Korea after getting a good job at the hotel, not having time to tell Sun-jun. "So she left Europe to work in a hotel?" My dumbass boy seemed happy, thinking it meant he'd be seeing Ha-jin more often, which made Hari nervous. As soon as he left, she called Ha-jin for help, but it was her colleague Shin-wook who answered the phone. When Hari got home, she couldn't wait to tell Ha-jin that her lie had been exposed, but Ha-jin swore she would cut all ties with the evil Sun-jun from now on, and forbade Hari from mentioning his name again, leaving Hari to keep the hotel incident to herself. The next morning, Sun-jun, too focused on work, mistakenly drank water from a vase thinking it was coffee. Later, while waiting at a red light, he overheard someone say, "Green light, let's go," something Ha-jin used to say. Coincidentally, Ha-jin was walking down the same street, but neither of them recognized each other. Sun-jun, thinking it was Hari, called her, but quickly realized he was wrong. Well, that was awkward, he thought. At the office, Sun-jun pushed everyone to come up with new ideas, but he rejected them all faster than an elevator on a broken cable. During one meeting, when the team leader asked Ha-jin to turn on the projector, she panicked and grabbed an LED light, shining it straight into Sun-jun's face. In her panic, she switched to another light, causing the entire office to burst into laughter. Afterward, Shin-wook noticed how terrified Ha-jin was of Sun-jun and decided to stay behind to help her. However, his presence only made her more frantic, which he found oddly cute. "I didn't know being terrified could look this adorable," he thought. Later, when Sun-jun requested the meeting report, Ha-jin, in a panic, turned to her colleagues for help. Unfortunately, everyone was too busy, so she had no choice but to submit a report full of errors. Sun-jun wasted no time in criticizing her harshly. "Is this a report or a K-drama script?" he snapped. "Did you get this job through connections?" His words stung, but Hyen stood her ground. "Nope, just a lot of coffee and perseverance," she thought. She explained that she had originally been appointed assistant branch manager but had been reassigned to the magazine team. "I'm not relying on connections, just my ambition." Sun-jun remained indifferent, though. "Look, I don't work with amateurs' ugly ass," he said. "If you don't improve, I'll send you packing faster than a taxi in rush hour." Then he threw her report on the ground and ordered her out. "Who let someone ugly ass like this in?" he muttered. Feeling humiliated, Ha-jin went to the warehouse to sort goods with Mina, but she struggled because she didn't know the names of the cosmetics. She also ran into Sun-jun while he was checking outfits and later fell victim to Shin-wook's prank, hitting her head on a noodle package. Everyone in the office seemed to enjoy teasing her. Desperate, Ha-jin tried to return to the assistant management room, where at least she could clean, pour tea, and not be ridiculed. But the manager refused, sending her back to the fashion team. Not long after, she was dragged away again, forced to juggle errands all day long. By the time she got off work, she was utterly exhausted. Still, when she saw an elderly woman on the bus, she gave up her seat without hesitation. That night, she complained to Hari, hoping for comfort. Instead, Hari gave her a reality check. "Specialized terminology is different in every industry," she pointed out. "Since you joined the fashion team, have you even tried reading magazines? Or are you just asking others what this is and what that is? You're not taking the initiative to learn, yet you're blaming others for not helping you." Hari's words hit Ha-jin so hard like a baseball. She stayed awake all night, reflecting on her mistakes. Determined to improve, she went to Hari's bookshelf, looking for fashion magazines with notes. As if expecting this, Hari had already left a note of encouragement for her. From that night on, Ha-jin began her journey of self-improvement. On her way to work, she researched fashion. At night, she studied Hari's outfit coordination knowledge. She learned about cosmetics and practiced recognizing clothing brands and outfit combinations. Thanks to her efforts, her performance improved significantly, and she gained confidence. Even the strict editor-in-chief praised her. She could now understand difficult fashion terms in meetings, and the report she submitted to Sun-jun was much more refined. However, she was still clumsy. Shin-wook kept pestering her after work, insisting she take him out for spicy rice cakes because my boy really want her cakes. She couldn't understand why he clung to her so much, but in the end, she had no choice. While eating, he accidentally spilled sauce on both himself and her. His real intention was to strip her cloth. Sorry, his real intention was to show her that she wasn't the only clumsy one, so she shouldn't feel bad about it. Meanwhile, Hari had to go home for her father's birthday, but home was the coldest place for her. Her mother had passed away, and her father had remarried a hot baddie. Her stepmother disliked her, and their relationship was tense. That night, her stepmother insulted Hari's biological mother, and in anger, Hari snapped back, calling her stepmother a bitch with no integrity. However, instead of defending her, Hari's father slapped her and forced her to apologize. Heartbroken, she muttered a cold, sorry, and left. Feeling lost, she called Ha-jin, hoping her best friend would listen, but there was no answer. That same night, she had planned to meet Sun-jun to end things with him, but now, overwhelmed by emotions, she drank alone at a bar. Sun-jun had been waiting for her and upon calling, discovered her location. He rushed to the bar, only to find her being harassed by a man. Without hesitation, he intervened. But when he scolded Hari for being careless, she got furious and smashed a sussy pineapple on the man's head. The situation escalated, and by the end of the fight, the man was injured. Hari's hand was scratched, and Sunjun had a small wound on his forehead from an ashtray. Hari felt guilty for causing his injury, but he was more concerned about her. Ha-jin finally saw Hari's message and hurried to the bar, but by then, Sunjun had already taken Hari to the hospital for treatment. Afterward, he even stopped at a convenience store to buy cotton swabs for her wounds and took her to eat their old favorite dish. Although Hari had no memories of this dish, she found it tasted like shit. As she listened to Sunjun talk about his painful past and how Ha-jin's presence had once brought him joy, she doesn't give a fuck. She had planned to break up with him, but tonight, seeing his kindness, she decided to extend her trial period. The next morning, Sunjun visited his usual coffee shop. This time, the waiter carefully removed the vase of flowers before serving him. Just as he was about to leave, he noticed a diary. Ha-jin's younger sister had accidentally left it there. At that moment, Ha-jin arrived to meet her sister. When Sunjun saw her little sister, he was stunned because she was the same actress who played Ha-jin younger version. It felt like seeing his first love all over again. Ha-jin panicked and demanded the notebook back, but Sunjun raised it out of her reach, trying to get to know her sister. Flustered, Ha-jin blurted out, "She's Ha-jin's younger sister," then turned around and ran away. To escape, she called Sunjun, falsely claiming the editor-in-chief needed him back at the office urgently. In reality, Sunjun wasn't just harsh on Ha-jin because of her clumsiness. He was equally strict with everyone. Even magazines personally crafted by the editors and team leaders would be discarded if they weren't perfect in his eyes. He was only gentle with the person he considered his first love. On the way to work, he saw a beautiful sky, so he stopped to take a photo and sent it to Hari, casually asking about her wound. This small gesture comforted the horny Hari. At the same time, at the company, Ha-jin also wanted to take a picture of the sky, but was stopped by Shin-wook. From the moment he saw Ha-jin on the bus, giving up her seat for an elderly person, he ignored her appearance and instead admired her inner beauty. He liked her. That night, when Ha-jin went home, she was still haunted by the lizard-face editor-in-chief's words. She needed to change her appearance. So, she decided to make a small effort. The next day, her transformation at the company left Sunjun extremely surprised. That day, the fashion team was assigned to drive Sunjun to the airport to pick up a partner. No one wanted to be near the brain-rotted boss, but suddenly, Ha-jin volunteered to take the job. In reality, she was being played by Shin-wook, who told her there was a hole in her armpit. She instinctively raised her hand to check. Wow, how convincing. Exactly at 4 p.m., Sunjun got into the car and they departed. He glanced at the rearview mirror and was startled. He asked, "Bitch, do you have a driver's license?" Ha-jin confidently replied that she got 100 points in theory, but in the practical part, she almost fart, yet still passed. Even though she hated this boss, she tried to find a funny topic to talk about. However, he ignored her, making her furious. Ha-jin drove, but Sunjun didn't tell her which airport they were heading to, so she drove to the farthest one. By the time he realized, they were already on a one-way highway. If they wanted to turn around, they had to reach the toll booth quickly. However, the road ahead was jammed with traffic. It was very difficult to invite a famous artist, and if they missed this chance, there wouldn't be another. Knowing it was her fault, Ha-jin quickly got out of the Lamborghini car and ran to a street vendor. She asked him to drive Sunjun to the airport first. Before Sunjun could react, Ha-jin grabbed his hat, put it on his head, and pushed him into the vendor's bike. The skilled driver maneuvered through the traffic jam and got Sunjun to the airport just in time. By the time Ha-jin arrived, everything had been arranged. She felt reassured, but Sunjun was still angry and scolded her for being negligent. Ha-jin froze. It was clear that she had tried very hard to ask him where he was going, but he ignored her. Frustrated, she blocked his car door and shouted at him. She hated people like him, those who looked down on others the moment they found them slightly inferior. After saying that, she slammed the door shut, carried 2 big bags of rice cakes, and walked home alone. Her first love was not such a selfish person. That night, Ha-jin asked Hari to go drinking to relieve her sadness, but Hari was equally upset. Her father had visited to apologize for slapping her the other day, but afterward, he expected her to open up to her stepmother, calling her a sensitive woman. Hari was furious. "If your second wife is so sensitive, what about me?" she snapped. Frustrated, she told him to fuck off and have dinner with his family. It would be warmer than eating with someone like her. At the fashion company, the heavy rain mirrored Ha-jin's mood. She unknowingly grabbed the umbrella Sunjun had once given to Hari right in front of him. He brushed it off as a coincidence, but Hajin felt uneasy and quickly left. Later, she sat at a pub, waiting for her best friend, who hadn't seen her message yet. She was too busy lounging in a pool, escaping reality. Hari's mood had soured so much that when she ran into Sunjun at the gym, she ignored him entirely. But he noticed. Sensing her distress, he abandoned his workout and took her for a drive. To lift her spirits, Sunjun brought her to a park for a game of badminton. Surprisingly, it worked. She felt lighter. His attention warmed her, and for the first time, Hari confided in him about missing her mother. Sunjun shared that he had faced the same pain but had found comfort in her presence years ago. That realization made Hari uneasy. Meanwhile, Ha-jin, now completely drunk, sat across from Shin-wook, who had just finished work. Watching her flushed face with amusement, he suddenly felt like teasing her, hoping to make her swear for fun. Too intoxicated to think clearly, Ha-jin nearly blurted the secret about her connection with Sunjun. Luckily, she passed out before revealing anything. Because of course there are more upcoming episodes. With no other choice, Shin-wook took her home. On the way, she nearly stumbled into someone, then dropped to the ground and emptied her pockets. Finding her phone, she called Sunjun. The moment he answered, she started yelling, calling him a gay with zero testosterone. Then, in her drunken haze, she blurted out her real identity. Sunjun, unfazed, simply asked if she was drunk and told her to go home safely. The next morning, Ha-jin woke up clutching the bed, violently nauseous. Hari informed her that she had vomited all over Shin-wook the night before. Mortified, Hari noticed something odd. She was wearing long pants today. It reminded her of Sunjun, who had told her not to wear shorts because of the cold. She had ignored her father's advice, but unconsciously followed Sunjun's. On her way to work, Ha-jin checked her phone and saw that she had called Sunjun. Panicking, she asked Shin-wook if she had said anything embarrassing. He smirked and refused to answer unless she bought him 2 kimbap rolls. Once bribed, he revealed that she had cursed Sunjun as a low-testosterone gay without beard. Before he grabbed the phone and hung up, Ha-jin sighed in relief. But something was off. Despite her insults, Sunjun hadn't reacted like his usual strict self. Meanwhile, Sunjun had a realization while sipping coffee at a cafe. Overhearing a waiter's complaint, he understood. Whenever he focused too much, he didn't register what people were saying. It hit him then. When he had blamed Ha-jin for leading him the wrong way, it had actually been his fault. That evening, the editor-in-chief threw a celebration for the company's success, all thanks to Sunjun's deal with a renowned artist. Attendance was mandatory. Sunjun had no interest in drinking, but the editor-in-chief insisted. Rather than argue, he picked up a glass of wine and downed it in one go. His expression stayed composed, but as he left the event, he suddenly collapsed. Ha-jin and Shin-wook, about to exit, saw Sunjun on the floor. They quickly took him back to his hotel. Thirsty, Shin-wook demanded Ha-jin her milk. When she opened Sunjun's fridge, she noticed it was stocked entirely with mineral water. A strange concern crept over her. Sunjun drank only water to maintain his weight. As she left, she realized she had left her iPhone 16 Pro Max in Sunjun's room. Panicked, she tried guessing the password but failed. Eventually, thanks to an old diary from their childhood, she cracked it and retrieved her iPhone. At her hotel job, Hari was tasked with returning a VIP guest's forgotten music player. She spotted a disheveled man and hurriedly pulled him aside, only to realize he was the VIP. To her shock, he was Shin-wook, the elusive tycoon boy who worked purely out of passion. Meanwhile, Ha-jin lingered at Sunjun's hotel, staring at an unfinished puzzle on the table, a childhood memory they had once pieced together. Just as she reached for it, Sunjun suddenly appeared behind her, startling her and making her knock over the puzzle's glass case. Before she could step on the broken glass, he pulled her into his arms. Demanding to know why she was in his room, she blurted out that she broke the glass for revenge over what had happened at the airport. He didn't believe her, since Shin-wook wasn't around. Sunjun assumed she had come alone. Left with no choice, Ha-jin left, only to realize she was wearing one of Sunjun's shoes. Embarrassed, she had to turn back, but he slammed the door shut. A moment later, a slipper hooked onto a tree branch was tossed back at her. That night, Ha-jin's parents were cooking, and they welcomed Hari for dinner, treating her like family. After the meal, Ha-jin searched through her old belongings and stumbled upon a missing puzzle piece hidden in a children's book she had written. Memories flooded back. Sunjun had once given her an umbrella-shaped puzzle piece, promising that when he returned, he would protect her like an umbrella. But now, neither of them could bring themselves to say it aloud. On her way back, Ha-jin received a call from a coworker begging her to cover their report because they were too busy with their skincare routine. Annoyed, Ha-jin agreed, much to Hari's frustration. After finishing the task, curiosity led Ha-jin to Sun-jun's office where she accidentally knocked off a mannequin's arm. Just then, Sun-jun walked in. Panicked, she hid in the closet. As she peeked out, she overheard a critical conversation. If their top magazine didn't perform well, it would be discontinued. Now she understood why Sun-jun always pushed everyone so hard. This bitch smelled so bad that my man easily found her. But she promised to keep quiet, and he let her go. But in her rush, she unknowingly dropped the puzzle piece in front of his door. But this dickhead didn't notice it because there are more upcoming episodes. Later that evening, Sun-jun went to the gym, where he ran into Hari, who had just finished training. But instead of leaving, she decided to satisfy her lust. She made up an excuse, pretending she had just arrived. At the end of the session, she offered to drive him home. As they reached his doorstep, Sun-jun noticed an eyelash on Hari's cheek. Gently, he brushed it away. "Make a wish," he said, reminding her of their childhood habit. Hari laughed, but deep down in her ass, she also felt sad for Ha-jin. After returning home, Hari suddenly felt a pang of guilt for Ha-jin. She had taken advantage of Ha-jin's identity just to be close to her first love. The next morning, Ha-jin and Sun-jun walked to work together. The usual phrase, "Green light, let's go," was said once again. But this time, Sun-jun actually took notice of her and mistook her as a Squid Games fan. Upon arriving at the office, Ha-jin realized she had dropped a small puzzle piece near Sun-jun's workspace. How did she know the exact place? Never mind. Fearing that he might find it, she frantically searched for it first. She even crawled on the floor, startling her colleagues. But Sun-jun had already unknowingly stepped on it as he entered his office. Desperate, Ha-jin devised a plan. She took on a delivery task to his office, then pretended to drop a pen so she could bend down and retrieve the piece. However, every time she reached for it, Sun-jun's foot shifted. The moment he bent down to pick something up, Ha-jin was startled, making the whole situation even more sussy. Frustrated, he eventually told that bitch to fuck off. It wasn't until noon when he turned around that the puzzle piece finally dislodged from his shoe. Before he could notice, Shin-wook swiftly grabbed it. Earlier, he had overheard Ha-jin asking the cleaning staff about a missing puzzle piece, and the night before, he had accidentally learned about Ha-jin's connection to her first love. Realizing its significance, he decided to help her hide it. That evening, Ha-jin invited Shin-wook to a barbecue to thank him. She even played along, calling herself his stepsister. Meanwhile, Hari was working out at the gym, anticipating Sun-jun's arrival. She didn't know when, but at some point, she had started to like him. However, he never showed up, leaving her feeling unsettled. Later, at a convenience store, Hari unexpectedly ran into Shin-wook. Despite being from a wealthy background, he didn't have enough cash to pay for his instant noodles, so Hari covered for him. As a playful apology for an earlier misunderstanding, where she had assumed he was homeless, she teased him about it. Watching his carefree way of eating, she couldn't help but criticize him. But in the end, she found herself eating in the exact same manner, even commenting on how good the noodles were. While they chatted, Ha-jin called Hari, and they planned to walk home together. Hari thought they might all run into each other, but Shin-wook had already returned to his hotel before Ha-jin arrived. As days passed, Hari found herself regularly chased by a man. In the past, this kind of man would have been her ideal match, but now his flashy lifestyle felt suffocating. She no longer craved grand parties and luxury. She longed for something simple and real. When she saw Sun-jun's silhouette in the distance, she impulsively got out of the car to chase after him. But then reality hit her. She was nothing more than an imposter. She had no right to love him. Feeling lost and lust, she turned to Shin-wook. She asked him how to forget someone she wasn't meant to be with. In desperation, she even proposed a ridiculous plan. She wanted him to pretend to be her fiancé and stage a proposal in front of her crush so he would finally give up on her. That night, they waited, expecting Sun-jun to show up, but he never came. On his way, Sun-jun had gotten into some crazy shit. The heavy rain triggered old trauma, memories of his mother. Panic took over, making him lose control of the car. He wanted to escape, to run as fast as he could, but his body betrayed him, leaving him collapsed on the road like a homeless dog. From a nearby bus, Ha-jin saw everything unfold. Without hesitation, she ran out into the rain, grabbing a raincoat for him. She stayed by his side, speaking words of reassurance like she would let him eat her cake. In his dazed state, Sun-jun looked at that ugly ass and, for a moment, saw his first love in her face. It felt so real. She helped him to the bus stop despite his weak protests, but she refused to leave until she had called a taxi to take him home safely. Meanwhile, Hari called Soon-jun, only to learn that their boyfriend had passed out inside the taxi. Alarmed, she rushed to his place, explaining the situation briefly to Shin-wook before leaving my boy Shin-wook horny. When she arrived, she knocked on Sun-jun's door. He opened it, barely conscious, before collapsing into her arms. Hari, who had always been pampered and taken care of, found herself cooking porridge for the first time. It was messy and clumsy, but she did it for her love. Sun-jun, now already waked up, gazed at her and softly asked why she had come. Caught off guard, she found herself unable to say goodbye. Instead, she made up an excuse about returning his underwear. But just as she finished cooking, Sun-jun fell asleep. Elsewhere, Ha-jin, unable to deliver the porridge herself, called Shin-wook for help. In exchange, she promised to fulfill 3 of his dirty desires. No questions asked, he agreed immediately. However, upon arriving at Sun-jun's place, Shin-wook encountered trouble. Security mistook him for an escort. After clearing things up, he found the door unlocked and stepped inside. That's when he noticed something. Inside a jar, Sun-jun had been keeping puzzle pieces. Understanding the situation, Shin-wook decided to reveal Ha-jin's real identity to the unconscious Sun-jun. But before leaving, he replaced Ha-jin's porridge with Hari's bowl, one that had been ruined with vinegar. Initially, Shin-wook planned to leave, but when he saw Sun-jun's fever worsen, he reluctantly stayed to take care of him. The next morning, Sun-jun awoke to find a man in his home. Startled, he demanded an explanation. Shin-wook casually mentioned that Ha-jin had sent him to care for Sun-jun. He also nonchalantly admitted that he had borrowed a pair of Sun-jun's underwear, promising to return them. Horrified, Sun-jun simply gave him the underwear, wanting him gone as soon as possible. Later, Sun-jun messaged Hari, thanking her for the sussy porridge, assuming she had made it for him. Meanwhile, Ha-jin had caught a cold from staying out in the rain. Every time she sneezed at work, her co-workers flinched. Seeing her unwell, Sun-jun felt guilty. She had shielded him from the rain, reminding him of his first love. Determined to help, he rushed to the pharmacy to buy condoms. Cold medicine. But when he got back to the office, he hesitated. Maintaining his image as the untouchable deputy editor-in-chief, he hid the medicine the moment someone passed by. By the time he finally decided to give it to her, it was too late. Shin-wook had already stepped in, placing a fever patch on Ha-jin's forehead and handing her a cute cat mask. Seeing this, Sun-jun grew frustrated. Instead of handing her the medicine, he lashed out, accusing her of not finishing a report, then angrily threw the medicine away. Later, he invited Hari to lunch as thanks for the porridge, but it rained again. That's when he noticed something. Unlike his first love, Hari wasn't afraid of the rain. In fact, she seemed to enjoy it. She explained that as a child, she had played in the rain with her mother. At the office, Ha-jin was left to handle all the leftover work, as usual. Too used to being pushed around, she silently took it all on. But the medicine made her drowsy, and she dozed off. Seeing her asleep at her desk, Sun-jun found himself acting strangely. He even turned off an incoming call so it wouldn't disturb her. That night, as Ha-jin rode the bus home, Sun-jun secretly followed her, unable to rest easily. He sat beside her, letting her unknowingly lean on his shoulder. But to preserve his dignity, he used a newspaper to cover his face. As he watched her sleep, something became clear. Since that rainy night, his feelings had started to change. While being with Hari felt unfamiliar, Ha-jin was beginning to feel like home. But by then, Hari, that hot baddie, had already fallen for him. That night, Hari overheard Ha-jin saying that if the most popular Korean magazine didn't reach the top position within 2 months, the entire magazine team would be dissolved. As a result, Sun-jun will return to America. Feeling utterly lost, Hari confided in Shin-wook. Unaware that the man she loved was Sun-jun, Shin-wook enthusiastically encouraged her, saying that love wasn't her fault and that she should take a bold step to win the heart of the one she loved. Inspired by his words, Hari resolved to fight for her love within the remaining 2 months. While at home, she stumbled upon a missing puzzle piece on her best friend's desk. This piece reminded her of the jigsaw puzzle story Sun-jun had once shared with her. A selfish plan formed in her mind, but at the same time, Sun-jun found himself unconsciously drawn to Ha-jin, staring at her with thirsty eyes during meetings without realizing it. Then, the story took a sudden turn. Hari presented Sun-jun with the missing puzzle piece, revealing that she had kept it for decades. Perhaps their fate was still intertwined. Staring at the piece of shit, Sun-jun was left speechless. His emotions for Hari were complex, but her love for him was unwavering. That evening, Hari went on a date with Sun-jun. However, while in the restroom, her stepmother caught her using a fake name. Seizing the opportunity, her stepmother threatened to expose her. To protect her love, Hari humbled herself for the first time and pleaded with her stepmother to keep her secret. This only piqued her stepmother's curiosity further, leading her to directly approach Sunjun without revealing her true identity. This left Hari feeling anxious and full of self-pity. All she wanted was love, but the constant secrecy was exhausting. That night, she hugged her pillow and went into Ha-jin's room, wanting to sleep with her, sleep beside her. She felt guilty for Ha-jin, but also yearned for happiness. She wanted to love Sunjun for 2 months before letting him return to America, hoping she could still remain close friends with Ha-jin afterward. Meanwhile, Sunjun felt empty, as if his heart were a fragmented collage. Though he believed his feelings for Ha-jin were merely peculiar, he knew that Hari was his first love. In a moment of frustration, he threw an onion into the trash. The next day at work, Sunjun reverted to his cold demeanor. Their magazine had a scheduled business trip, but when reporter Cha got busy, she assigned the task to Ha-jin. Han-so, believing Jun-woo to be a wealthy young man with a big dick, schemed to get closer to him. She pulled him into her car first, leaving Ha-jin to share a ride with Sunjun. During the drive, Ha-jin tried to make conversation, but Sunjun, irritated, snapped at her to be quiet, making her shrink back shyly. Upon arrival, the others were occupied, so only Sunjun and Ha-jin continued the business trip together. At a restaurant, Sunjun confidently ordered 2 of the most expensive meals. When Ha-jin warned him about the high price, he brushed her off arrogantly, insisting she eat without worry because he would cover the bill. However, he soon realized he had left his wallet at the company. Clueless about his predicament, he even donned a bikini-shaped apron given by the restaurant owner, much to Ha-jin's barely concealed amusement. When it was time to pay, Sunjun panicked upon discovering his wallet was missing. Frustrated, he turned to Ha-jin, demanding she cover the bill using the BJ method. However, Ha-jin was also broke, and even after multiple swipes of her card, they were still short of 40,000 won. In desperation, Sunjun offered his luxurious silk scarf as collateral, but the unimpressed restaurant owner insisted on cash. Sunjun called Han-so for help, but she claimed to be lost, though in reality, she was intentionally prolonging her time with Jun-woo, hoping to create romantic moments with him. Ha-jin then called Hari, who didn't pick up before trying Shin-wook, only for reporter Cha to answer. The boss misunderstood the situation, believing it to be a scam, and refused to transfer any money. Enraged, the restaurant owner sharpened her knife threateningly to cut his private part. With no other option, Sunjun and Ha-jin were forced to work at the restaurant for a day to pay off their debt. Once a sophisticated deputy editor-in-chief, Sunjun now found himself scrubbing floors in purple pants and a bright blue shirt, cleaning cow manure. This dickhead can easily give his phone to the owner until he gets his money. But my boy has 69 IQ, never mind. During their work, the two accidentally collided and tumbled into the manure. Sunjun wanted to flee, but the restaurant owner's piercing glare left him no choice but to endure the humiliating labor alongside Ha-jin. At the end of the exhausting day, they collapsed onto a wooden board, gazing up at the beautiful sky. Whether it was the hard work or the moment of peace, they both felt a rare sense of fulfillment. However, Ha-jin soon realized that she had lost her employee card in the barn. Distressed, she frantically searched for it, but to no avail. Unexpectedly, Sunjun held the card up in front of her, his expression filled with uncharacteristic concern. Despite his usual disdain, he had overcome his aversion to filth to help her. As they traveled back, Ha-jin opened up about the significance of the employee card. It was proof of her first official job at a major company, something she cherished deeply. To Sunjun, it was just a piece of plastic, but to her, it symbolized her hard-earned achievement. He, in turn, revealed that the most meaningful thing to him was a collage she had accidentally broken. To others, it was just an incomplete puzzle, but to him, it held memories more valuable than gold. Ha-jin was deeply moved by his words. Suddenly, Sunjun raised his hand, demanding compensation for his troubles, catching Ha-jin off guard. Their work trip was scheduled for 2 days and 1 night, and they needed to decide on a location for a solo travel feature for the magazine. Meanwhile, Shin-wook called Jun-woo, only to learn that he and Han-so were still lost in lust. As a result, Ha-jin and Sunjun ended up staying together overnight, an idea that made Shin-wook uneasy. Hari, sensing this, called both Sunjun and Ha-jin. Learning about their situation, she felt a sudden pang of jealousy and worry. Meanwhile, Ha-jin and Sunjun discussed their perspectives on solo travel. Ha-jin unexpectedly voiced Sunjun's own thoughts, her loneliness, and the longing to write to an important person. This prompted Sunjun to share his past, his years of solitude in America, the bullying he endured, and how he persevered thanks to a supportive friend from Korea who had once sent him letters. But one day, those letters stopped coming, leaving him heartbroken. Ha-jin fell silent, unable to find the words to respond. Instead, she ran off to play on the beach. Sunjun found himself wanting to capture the moment, secretly watching her from a distance. As they later sat together to eat, he realized how much he had unconsciously opened up to Ha-jin, something he had never done with Hari, whom he still mistakenly believed to be his first love. As they talked, Ha-jin recognized a familiar wooden puzzle and a melody that only Sunjun and his first love knew. Their conversation flowed naturally, as if two long-lost soulmates had finally reunited. It wasn't until the restaurant staff reminded them of closing time that they reluctantly retreated to their own space. That night, Sunjun reflected on their conversation. For the first time, he realized that he had respected and trusted Ha-jin in a way he hadn't anticipated. Meanwhile, Ha-jin was happy to see that despite everything, the old Sunjun hadn't disappeared. He was simply trying to cope with independence. Lost in thought, Ha-jin suddenly felt an overwhelming urge to reveal her true identity to Sunjun. She longed to share her loneliness with him, to be by his side without hesitation, and to remind him that he wasn't alone in this world and in the Milky Way galaxy. But just as she was about to speak, Shin Wook appeared. Worried that something might develop between them, he deliberately inserted himself into the situation, bringing his backpack along as an excuse to linger. Sunjun, annoyed by his presence, walked away immediately. But when he overheard Shin Wook inviting Ha-jin out for drinks, he refused to let them go alone and insisted on joining. At the bar, Shin Wook dominated the conversation with an unusual topic: his lack of underwear. In his rush to leave earlier, he had forgotten to pack any, so he shamelessly continued borrowing Sunjun's. "So you are saying that a billionaire can't even buy his own underwear?" Sunjun, clearly exasperated, tried to ignore him. Ha-jin, on the other hand, couldn't help but laugh. But for some reason, Shin Wook constantly sought opportunities to get close to her, clearly trying to provoke Sunjun. Though irritated, Sunjun forced himself to stay composed. However, when Shin Wook playfully dropped a fake spider into Ha-jin's hand, making her scream, Sunjun lost his patience. He smacked Shin Wook on the head, leaving him dizzy. After drinking a little more, Sunjun started feeling lightheaded and eventually passed out, forcing Ha-jin and Shin Wook to carry him back to his room. While watching over Sunjun, Ha-jin was startled when Shin Wook entered the room. To his shock, he discovered a photo of Ha-jin hidden among Sunjun's things. A wave of emotions hit him, and needing to clear his mind, he left for a jog like heartbroken dog. When the business trip ended, Sunjun returned to work with a noticeable change. He greeted his colleagues with a simple, "Good morning." His co-workers found this unfamiliar and unsettling, while Shin Wook outright hated it. That night, while out for dinner, Ha-jin confessed that she had intended to reveal her identity to Sunjun. Hearing this, he looked both nervous and sad. He then told her that the picture of his lost puppy was something he used to see as a sister. But now, when he looked at Ha-jin, he saw more, something deeper. But the more he insisted, the more she wanted to escape. Elsewhere, Sunjun was walking with Hari when she suddenly asked, "If we hadn't been childhood friends, would we still be like this?" Her question made him stop in his tracks. Before he could answer, she turned to him and kissed him. Unbeknownst to them, Shin Wook witnessed the hot scene. At that moment, he realized that the person Hari had always hesitated to love was Sunjun. He quickly stopped Ha-jin from looking and, instead, hugged her tightly to feel her boobie. If Hari could take a chance on love, he would too. Sunjun didn't immediately respond to Hari's confession. Instead, he took her to a place where they had once drawn pictures of their younger selves. But Hare didn't want to revisit the past, because in that past, she didn't exist in Sunjun's heart. Understanding this, Sunjun quietly drew a new picture, one of himself and Hari in the present. "I won't dwell on the past anymore," he said. Moved, Hari drew a heart around them. She truly wanted to be with him, but she had made a decision. Because Ha-jin is her best friend, she would only stay by his side for just 2 months. After that, she would confess everything to Ha-jin, because their friendship was too precious to lose. Ha-jin, after seeing her best friend so sad and depressed, wholeheartedly supported her. This only made Hari feel more conflicted. That evening, as she called Sunjun to invite him to a movie, Ha-jin walked into the room. Panicking, Hari quickly ended the call, afraid Sunjun would hear Ha-jin's voice. Meanwhile, Shin-wook wrestled with his own secret. He wanted to tell Sunjun that Ha-jin had been his first love. He also wanted to warn Ha-jin that the two people she trusted most had been lying to her, but he couldn't bring himself to say the words. Instead, when Ha-jin's shoe broke, he simply carried her home. Man, if my girl is okay with getting carried like this by another dude, I will break up with that whore for sure. Anyway, as they walked, he asked her if she wanted to reveal her identity to Sunjun to reunite with her old friend or because of something more. Even Ha-jin wasn't sure. From a distance, Sunjun saw them together. His gaze lingered for too long, and he crashed into the car in front of him. The impact barely registered in his mind. His thoughts were in turmoil. Who did he love? He didn't know. Ha-jin stirred something deep within him. But for years, he had believed Hari was his first love, the one who had kept him going through life's hardships. The realization tormented him. After the accident, he tries to avoid going to the movies but eventually goes there. But even as they sat there, he felt no joy. Next day, at the zebra crossing, he suddenly heard Ha-jin say, "The light's green, let's run." Her words stirred something in his heart. Instinctively, he reached out and pulled her back. The thought that she might be his long-lost first love refused to leave his mind. That same day, Ha-jin was determined to finally tell Sunjun the truth. But at work, tensions were high. Headquarters from the US was pressuring him to increase productivity, making him more irritable than usual. When a costume designer accidentally touched a delicate fabric with jewelry, he exploded, fearing it would ruin the dress. Frustrated, he dismissed the designer and demanded someone else take over. The responsibility fell to Ha-jin, the most responsible and matured woman in the office. Just as she was about to complete her task, a coworker asked her for help retrieving car keys. Ha-jin hesitated, but eventually stepped away. In her absence, a model tried on the dress, causing it to tear. "Didn't I tell you she is the most responsible and matured woman?" Furious, Sunjun fired that bitch on the spot. Heartbroken, she left in tears. That day, she had planned to reunite with her best friend. But now, everything had fallen apart. Later, the real culprit confessed, admitting that she had ruined the dress, not Ha-jin. Sunjun sighed, the weight of everything, his emotions, his work, pressing down on him. When Hari called, he ignored that flat-chest girl too. Meanwhile, Shin-wook had already warned Hari that Ha-jin was going to tell Sunjun the truth. "If she does," he said, "you'll lose both your best friend and the man you love. Tell him first." That night, Hari desperately tried to call Sunjun, but he wouldn't answer. She then called Ha-jin instead. Through her tears, Ha-jin said, "He yelled at me, told me to go away. My first love doesn't want to see me anymore." Hearing this, Hari rushed to her side, hugging her apologetically. Knowing that Ha-jin had lost her job, Shin-wook invited her to assist him for a day, helping him take landscape photos for his writing project. She hesitated, but he reminded her of the 3 promises she had made to him, along with an attractive paycheck. Reluctantly, she agreed. Spending the day with Shin-wook was easy. There was no pressure, no scolding. She had fun, but no matter how much she tried, she couldn't see him as more than a friend. Later, Shin-wook presented Ha-jin's design ideas to Sunjun, reminding him that her simple yet creative thinking had been exactly what he needed. And yet, he had pushed her away. "You're usually so rational," Shin-wook pointed out. "Why did you lose your temper with her?" Sunjun had no answer, so Shin-wook asked directly, "Do you like her?" Sunjun hesitated. Instead of answering, he turned the question back. "What about you?" Without missing a beat, Shin-wook replied, "I like Ha-jin." Then he added, "Apologize. Bring her back." That night, Sunjun brought Ha-jin's ideas and waited for her at the bus stop, but he didn't dare let her see him. He secretly followed her home, intending to call her, but just a small sound startled him, so he hid in a corner. After hiding for too long and his legs hurting, he carelessly fell down the slide, stopping right in front of Ha-jin. Wow, how convincing. He had no choice but to sit down and talk seriously with her. He praised her new, open idea and asked her to return to the company, but she immediately refused. She allowed him to use her ideas, but she couldn't return to work because that environment didn't belong to her. Moreover, working with him made her very uncomfortable. The real reason Ha-jin boldly refused the job was that her former department head had introduced her to another opportunity. However, the next morning, no one called her to tell her to come to work, so Ha-jin called the department head to ask. And then she learned that her position had been canceled. She just wanted to cry. Yesterday, she had rejected Sunjun, and now she was kicked out of the position she had applied for. Her house ran out of rice, and her father's printing factory also had problems, so she couldn't go back to her parents' house. While Ha-jin was sad, the communications manager told her that the third party had changed their mind about accepting her. At the same time, Sun Jun also sent a photo of the onion crying, calling for Ha-jin to take care of it, making her laugh. It seemed she had made a decision for herself. After a while, at Most Magazine, no one had seen Ha-jin doing chores, making everything busy and confusing. Thinking that no one would answer the phone, a familiar voice rang out, "Hello, it's Ha-jin." But she came back with a completely different appearance, more beautiful and attractive, surprising everyone. Now Ha-jin had to spend a large amount of money to restore her hair. She also bought clothes and learned how to do her makeup. When colleagues saw her again, they happily hugged her. Now that she was back, Ha-jin's new look even impressed the editor-in-chief, who complimented her. However, Shin-wook felt that the old Ha-jin was the most beautiful because her face has red, ugly spots. Sitting down to talk, he realized that the reason she returned to the company was to work hard to make money. She wanted to save enough money to buy her father a new printer for the printing factory and improve their life. Moreover, she completely avoided revealing her identity to Sun Jun. During an idea meeting, she boldly stated her thoughts. Instead of having famous models wear gorgeous, extravagant outfits, she proposed turning the spotlight on ordinary people who silently dedicate themselves, such as employees in logistics departments, because they are also the main characters who deserve to shine. After hearing this idea, everyone responded enthusiastically, and that's exactly what Sun Jun wanted. Finally, after many meetings, he finalized Ha-jin's idea that ordinary people deserve to be the bright main characters of their own lives. At the end of the meeting, Sun Jun returned Ha-jin's notebook and old employee card to her. He hoped she would stick with him and the company for a long time. Meanwhile, back to Hari, she had to hide her feelings and the truth about herself. The stress caused her severe stomach pain. She farted and fainted in the convenience store. But luckily, Shin-wook took her to the hospital. The doctor diagnosed the cause of her illness as not being able to eat or sleep well due to pressure. Hearing this, Shin-wook also understood the problem. He patiently waited for Hari to wake up to confide in her. Hari burst into tears and said that Sun Jun was also her first love because he was the first person to make her heart flutter and truly cared about her, not because of her appearance. Shin-wook told Hari to calm down. He explained that Sun Jun thought Hari was his first love, while Ha-jin was his best friend. How could Hari interrupt them? But everyone pursues happiness, especially for a girl like Hari who lacks sincere feelings. She returned home to sleep and forget everything. When she woke up, she saw Ha-jin cooking for her. Ha-jin, unlike her stepmother, who threw back a check and left when she was sick, truly cared for her. But Hari lied to her, and she could only silently beg herself to allow her a brief happiness with Sun Jun, even if only for 2 months. During this time, Shin-wook also enthusiastically pursued Ha-jin. He noticed that the bag containing her employee card was very nice, but it had been a welcome gift from Sun Jun upon her return to work. That night, Shin-wook brought a huge gift box and drove after Ha-jin. He loudly declared that it was his own welcome gift for her, making her blush shyly. He compared the small packaging of her employee card to his bag, which was bigger and more sincere. Ha-jin understood his intentions but didn't want to accept it. In response, Shin-wook immediately turned to offer the gift to a passing dog, prompting Ha-jin to quickly take it in embarrassment. The Most Magazine's first major event finally arrived. Many famous actors and models attended, but Sun Jun had yet to arrive. As Ha-jin guided the host, she realized that heavy rain outside had delayed him. Anxiety filled her as she worried about Sun Jun. The ceremony began, and the MC displayed pictures of the magazine staff to acknowledge their efforts. However, the event was meant to open with Sun Jun's English speech, which still hadn't happened. Concern spread among the attendees when the editor-in-chief stepped onto the stage. With her unique voice and commanding presence with leathered face, she turned the event around, buying time for Sun Jun. Since she didn't speak English, she instructed the staff to run English subtitles. Her speech was as inspiring as Sun Jun's, expressing deep appreciation for the hard work of her team. Meanwhile, Sun Jun, despite his fear of rain, managed to arrive just in time. Seeing the overwhelming support for the editor-in-chief's speech eased his tension. After delivering her speech, she stepped outside to meet Sun Jun. He repeatedly apologized, unable to defend himself further. Understanding his struggles, she chose not to question him and simply walked away. Only Ha-jin truly understood Sun-jun's suffering, but she didn't know what role she had in his life or how to comfort him. Instead, she sat silently by his side. Ha-jin, usually gentle, couldn't hold back her anger when she overheard her colleagues calling Sun-jun a gay. She stood up and fiercely scolded them. Sun-jun appeared just in time to hear everything but didn't want Ha-jin to cause trouble on his behalf. He pulled her aside and thanked her for standing by him. At the magazine, reporter Cha wanted to give Ha-jin an opportunity to write an article based on the fairy tale concept she had been contemplating. It was a chance for her to grow and solidify her position at the company. However, feeling inadequate, Ha-jin turned down the offer. When Sun-jun found out, he followed Ha-jin to the bus stop that night, showing her a photo of the god of opportunity. He encouraged her, saying that if she didn't seize opportunities when they arrived, they would vanish, leaving her with regret. Life requires challenges to truly discover one's abilities. Inspired by his ChatGPT-type motivation, Ha-jin approached reporter Cha the next morning, asking for another chance to write the article. Determined to test her talent, she resolved to push herself. Meanwhile, Hari and Shin-wook's relationship continued to grow. However, as her condition worsened, she asked him to take a walk with her. Unexpectedly, the fresh air and peaceful stroll gave her a sensation she had never experienced before, a strange yet refreshing feeling. After deep contemplation, Hari decided to return to her true identity and honestly confess everything to Sun-jun. She arranged to meet him that night. In the meantime, Ha-jin encountered a setback. Since it was her first time writing an article for the magazine, she needed to conduct field research. Reporter Cha lent her his car, but that bitch mistakenly took another colleague's car keys. Unfortunately, that car broke down and couldn't travel far, leaving her stranded. Shin-wook, concerned for Ha-jin's safety, kept calling her, but she was too distracted to notice. Reporter Cha also contacted the deputy editor to inform them of the situation. Meanwhile, Sun-jun, waiting for Hari, received the alarming news. His anxiety intensified when he saw an online article about a car accident near Ha-jin's. Without hesitation, he abandoned his meeting with Hari and rushed to the scene. Hari arrived, confused by Sun-jun's sudden departure. In her hands, she still held a letter containing a truth she had been preparing to reveal to him. Meanwhile, Shin-wook, gripped by fear, sped through the streets on his motorbike, while Sun-jun pushed his car to its limits, praying that Ha-jin was unharmed. The pouring rain only heightened Sun-jun's fear, but the thought of Ha-jin gave him the strength to push forward. Upon reaching the accident site, he frantically searched for her, asking the rescue team about the victim. Just then, a familiar voice called his name. Turning around, he saw Ha-jin safe and sound. Overwhelmed with relief, he ran to her, pulling her into a tight embrace, unable to express his emotions in words. From a distance, Shin-wook arrived just a moment too late, witnessing the scene. He clenched his fists, his heart and dick sinking. Ha-jin explained that the car had broken down and started smoking, forcing her to walk to find help, because obviously booking a cab is a crime in Korea. Sun-jun, standing with her in the rain, was surprised when she asked if he was all right. Only one person in his life had ever known about his fear of rain. He stammered, saying he hadn't even noticed the weather. His only concern had been her safety. Ha-jin, holding an umbrella over him, noticed Shin-wook standing alone in the rain, his expression unreadable. Before she could react, he turned and walked away. On the way back, Ha-jin sat quietly in Sun-jun's car, wrapped in a blanket he had carefully draped over her. The unfamiliar warmth made her feel uneasy. The embrace from earlier lingered in her mind, making her resolve to finally tell him the truth. But she realizes it's a K-drama, so she can't confront him right away. So, as soon as she got home, she immediately took her car and followed Sun-jun, determined to confront him. But when she arrived, she was met with a heart-wrenching sight. Her closest friend, that bitch, had used her identity to deceive Sun-jun. Shocked and betrayed, Ha-jin couldn't process what she had just witnessed. In a daze, she wandered aimlessly through the city, unaware of the passing cars and honking horns. She boarded a random bus, not realizing it was headed for the last stop. When the driver finally spoke, she snapped out of her trance and instinctively called Shin-wook, asking, "Where am I? And what's the point of all this?" Without hesitation, Shin-wook rushed to find her. He sat by her side, listening as she poured out her emotions. Then he quietly took her home. But to Ha-jin, he would always remain just a friend, perhaps even a brother. Once home, Ha-jin faced her friend, the one bitch who had betrayed her trust. Yet she remained calm, reminding herself that Hari must be suffering as well. She decided to wait for her to confess everything, but Ha-jin still possessed a crucial piece of evidence, a puzzle piece that proved the truth. The one Hari had given Sun-jun was nothing but a copy. Since that night, Ha-jin found herself unable to meet Sun-jun's gaze without recalling the embrace. She went out of her way to avoid being alone with him. She even asked Shin-wook to engage her in conversation whenever Sun-jun was near, hoping to create distance. But the more she avoided him, the more their paths seemed to cross. During a meeting, Sun-jun's intense gaze lingered on her, making her fidget uncomfortably. Usually, after handing in the meeting minutes, Ha-jin would be dismissed immediately. But today, Sun-jun insisted she stay until he finished reading them. As he adjusted her chair to a higher position, too high, in fact, Ha-jin's mind flashed back to the moment he had hugged her. Panicked, she fled the room under the excuse of urgent work. Despite her efforts to maintain distance, fate had other plans. The editor-in-chief handed Ha-jin an important task, delivering a suit directly to Sun-jun's home. The chief editor requested that Ha-jin wear the dress to accompany her at a formal gathering next week. Ha-jin was reluctant, but knew she couldn't refuse. Instead of delivering it herself, she left it at the hotel reception for Sun-jun. Just as she was about to leave, she felt his presence behind her. A shiver ran down her spine as he insisted she come up for tea. Feeling uneasy, she accepted, hoping to finish quickly. However, the tea was hot like your mom, forcing her to sip slowly. It was then that Sun-jun confessed his conflicting emotions, how being near her made him restless, even irrational. He admitted to taking out his frustrations on her and apologized sincerely. Shocked, Ha-jin fumbled, spilling tea all over herself. Without hesitation, Sun-jun offered his shirt, rolling up his sleeves to assist her. He admitted that his feelings were muddled, as if she reminded him of someone familiar, yet he couldn't be sure if it was love. His words brought tears to Ha-jin's eyes. She wanted to tell him the truth, that she was the one he was searching for, but she remained silent. Before he could fetch his car keys, she left in a hurry, afraid she would lose control and hurt her best friend. Meanwhile, Shin-wook revealed everything to Hari. Troubled by the truth, she returned home to find Ha-jin curled up in thought. Assuring Ha-jin that everything would be resolved by tomorrow, Hari expressed her gratitude. Ha-jin understood, but said nothing. The next day, Ha-jin interviewed a comic book author named Kin. They bonded over shared childhood dreams of storytelling, and he gifted her a book as encouragement. Afterward, she visited an art exhibit featuring Sun-jun's favorite artist. To her surprise, he was there. Their conversation flowed naturally, and when Ha-jin helped a couple take a picture, they insisted on returning the favor. She declined, but Sun-jun eagerly handed them his phone, wanting a photo together. Ha-jin planned to meet him again the next day, knowing that tonight, Hari would reveal her secret. However, before that could happen, Hari called Sun-jun, eager to share his feelings about Ha-jin. Back at work, Ha-jin overheard colleagues discussing how Shin-wook had been in an accident the previous day while searching for her. Confronting him, he brushed it off, claiming it was just a minor fall. She ran after him to express her gratitude, but instead, he used the last of the wishes she had once promised to fulfill, to embrace her. Holding her tightly, he confessed his feelings, admitting he wanted more than friendship but could do nothing about it. Elsewhere, Sun-jun arrived at the hotel, intending to meet Hari, but instead, he uncovered her secret, his eyes filled with questions. Unable to process what he had just learned, Hari had planned to confess, but the truth had surfaced on its own. With no room for more deception, she admitted that their first meeting was because of that ugly bitch Ha-jin, but her continued pursuit was driven by her own feelings. She had planned to tell him today, yet fate beat her to it. Sun-jun remained silent, not answering whether he could forgive her. Instead, he only asked one thing: where was his real Ha-jin? Hari, unable to hold back her emotions, revealed the truth. The girl he had once dismissed as foolish was the same one he had unknowingly longed for. Desperate for forgiveness, she pleaded, but Sun-jun turned away, overwhelmed. He had only one thought: he had to find Ha-jin. Tears streamed down his face as he drove, cursing himself for failing to recognize her sooner. Meanwhile, Shin-wook once again bared his heart to Ha-jin just as Sun-jun called, his voice trembling as he spoke her real name. Ha-jin froze. He knew the truth. As Sun-jun pleaded to see her, Shin-wook asked her to stay. Caught between two impossible choices, she could only apologize before running toward the one she had been waiting for all along, leaving Shin-wook horny and heartbroken. At a red light near the office, their eyes met, two souls beating in sync. They had crossed paths so many times, yet this moment felt entirely different. Laughter bubbled between them, overflowing with unspoken joy. Sunjun playfully scolded her for keeping the truth hidden, for making him miss her all these years. Though he regretted hurting his friend, he apologized for realizing everything too late. Ha-jin, overwhelmed, could only cry, unable to utter a single word. As they strolled together, sharing their long-suppressed feelings, Ha-jin confessed her fears. She had worried that he wouldn't accept her for who she truly was, so she foolishly kept her distance. But in Sunjun's gaze, there was no blame, only love for the first love he had yearned for. When he mentioned Hari, Ha-jin realized that her best friend must be devastated. She quickly rushed home. Hari, trying to maintain her composure, insisted that everything was over and encouraged Ha-jin to go out with friends. But later, Ha-jin stumbled upon an unsent letter meant for Sunjun. It was then that she understood Hari's pain. Her best friend had tasted real love for the first time, only to have it slip away. Ha-jin hurried out to find her. She finally found Hari alone, weeping in a secluded corner. The next day, they met again, pretending everything was fine, though the tension between them was palpable. Sunjun was in high spirits that morning. He wanted to hold Ha-jin's hand and run across the street like they used to, but she pulled away. He sensed her hesitation, realizing she was. Ha-jin was terrified of hurting Hari, so she forced herself to see Sunjun only as a friend because there are more than 2 episodes left. He saw through her act and pulled her aside, demanding an explanation. Choked with emotion, she uttered words that unintentionally wounded him. She wanted to say that she was protecting Hari, but the words wouldn't come. Sunjun left, heartbroken and horn. Later, Ha-jin noticed Shin-wook looking pale. Worried, she handed him money for hospital bills, but he only smiled faintly before walking away. Their exchange was overheard by Uncle Kim, who casually asked if she had feelings for Shin-wook. Unbeknownst to them, Sunjun had overheard as well, misunderstanding the situation. Meanwhile, Han-so and Jun-woo's relationship took an unexpected turn. Han-soo discovered Jun-woo wasn't a wealthy tycoon, just a laundromat owner with a tiny cock. Her dreams of a luxurious life vanished in an instant. That night, as Ha-jin returned home, she saw Hari hanging out with a reckless boyfriend, clearly trying to drown her pain. Heartbroken, Ha-jin dragged her inside, scolding her for self-destructing. They both knew the root of her change. Sunjun. Hari admitted that she couldn't face reality. She couldn't even look Ha-jin in the eye, knowing guilt would always haunt her. Deciding she could no longer stay, Hari resolved to leave town, walking away from everything she once had. Ha-jin insisted that she was the one staying there, so she decided to leave. Without hesitation, she packed her things and went to her parents' house. As soon as she arrived and the family gathered, they immediately asked about Hari. Their affection for Hari was obvious, which only deepened Ha-jin's sadness. But what she didn't expect was that, at that very moment, Sunjun called her younger sister. Without hesitation, her sister sent him their home address. Since Sunjun and Ha-jin had been close friends before, her parents weren't strangers to him. However, they couldn't help but notice how much more handsome he had become. Ha-jin, on the other hand, felt awkward and unsure of how to react. Seeing her discomfort, Sunjun smirked and couldn't resist teasing her. He jokingly told her parents that he and Ha-jin had gotten closer and tried to put sauce on the bun, which delighted her grandfather. In a hushed tone, he whispered to his wife to bring out the special wine he had brewed last year for his future son-in-law. Unable to refuse, Sunjun reluctantly drank the wine. But within 3 seconds, he collapsed on the table. With no other choice, Ha-jin had to let him stay the night. Later, as Mr. and Mrs. Kim sat admiring their future son-in-law, they couldn't stop praising his sharp features, saying he was a perfect match for their ugly daughter. Embarrassed, Ha-jin quickly ushered her parents back to their room. But after they left, she found herself staring at Sunjun's face with lust. At that moment, he suddenly woke up. The two sat there awkwardly, unsure of what to say. Later that night, outside under the dim glow of streetlights, Sunjun confronted Ha-jin. He wanted to know the real reason she was pushing him away. His feelings for her weren't just because she was his first love. Even before he realized she was the real Ha-jin, he had been drawn to her. Ha-jin, serious and composed, finally spoke. She explained that Hari had strong feelings for him, and since Hari was like family to her, she couldn't betray her. It wouldn't feel right. Hearing this, Sunjun looked her straight in the eyes. Firmly, he told her that his heart had only ever belonged to her, both then and now. He couldn't love Hari because, in his eyes, there was no watermelon on Hari. He was willing to wait for her, but he had just one request, that she wouldn't avoid him anymore. His words struck a chord in Ha-Jin's heart. After a moment of hesitation, she agreed. Meanwhile, Hari wandered the streets aimlessly when she unexpectedly ran into her biological mother. Years ago, her mother had left her with her father, but now she wanted Hari to come live with her. Realizing her mistake in abandoning her daughter, she wanted to make amends, but Hari felt a storm of emotions, pity for herself, yet indifference toward the woman who had left her behind. Desperate, her mother went to meet Ha-Jin's mother. Mrs. Choi had built a new life for herself, far from the past, but now she only wanted one thing: to take Hari with her and give her the love she had once withheld. Yet Hari continued to ignore her. In a final attempt, her mother sent a message. She would be going abroad in a few days and hoped Hari would meet her at least once, maybe even leave with her. Hari stared at the message, hesitating. Then, after a long pause, she made the call. She didn't say much, only that she wanted to eat the cat meat porridge her mother used to make. On the other hand, thanks to recent events, the magazine had climbed to second place in the industry rankings. But reaching the top spot was an entirely different challenge, and the pressure weighed heavily on Shin Wook. He even began considering an offer from a rival company, shocking his colleagues. That night, Sun Jun personally sought him out. He pleaded with Shin Wook to stay, revealing a crucial piece of information. The magazine's fate rested on its upcoming 20th anniversary. If it didn't reach the top, it would be shut down. Yet, Shin Wook remained silent. The next day, he didn't show up at work. Alarmed, Ha-Jin called the hotel where he was staying. But instead of answering her question, the receptionist asked, "Do you know where Hari went?" Hari had quit her job and cut off all contact with her colleagues. Hearing that, Ha-Jin rushed home. But Hari was nowhere to be found. Panic surged through her as she ran to the airport, fearing she had already lost her best friend, tears spilling down her cheeks. She had just given up hope when, out of the corner of her eye, she saw a familiar flat-chest figure walking past. It was Hari. Letting out a deep sigh of relief, Ha-Jin sprang up and hugged her tightly. Hari reassured her. She wasn't leaving. She had only come to the airport to see off her mother. She wanted to stay, to make up for her past mistakes. That one hug, those few words, and everything between them felt like before, like nothing had ever changed. Ha-Jin chose not to dwell on the past and forgave Hari for everything that actually happened due to her own stupid decision. Meanwhile, after a long and exhausting day at work, Sun Jun nearly had a heart attack when he walked into his apartment, only to find Shin Wook standing there, wrapped in nothing but a towel. Completely unfazed, Shin Wook casually admired Sun Jun's bathroom, declaring it so luxurious that he planned to come over often just to bathe. Sun Jun was furious, but there was little he could do. Shin Wook had actually come to discuss new strategies for boosting the magazine's sales in time for the upcoming anniversary celebration. Though he often acted foolish and horny, his artistic talent was undeniable. However, in Sun Jun's eyes, Shin Wook still lacked something special. He critiqued him harshly, pushing Shin Wook to prove himself. In the end, Shin Wook decided to return to work, and even mended his friendship with Ha-Jin. When their colleagues saw Shin Wook back at the office, they greeted him with enthusiasm. Sun Jun, on the other hand, remained cold and focused, immediately handing out assignments. However, the stress of overwork soon caught up with him. After days of intense pressure, he suddenly suffered a nosebleed. His panicked coworkers tried to help, but only ended up tilting his head in every possible direction, completely ruining his composed, cool boss image. Sun Jun was helpless in their grasp. Ha-Jin, watching all this unfold, was so flustered that she accidentally typed gibberish into her keyboard. Later, during lunch, the office was filled with chatter and noise, giving Sun Jun a massive headache. Worried about him, Ha-Jin quickly grabbed some papers, handed over her company card, and shooed everyone out for lunch. When one particularly chatty screenwriter still wouldn't stop talking, she even covered his mouth with a sussy file to ensure Sun Jun could rest. That evening, Ha-Jin finally returned home, only to find her younger sister hanging out with Hari. Unaware of recent events, her sister innocently mentioned that Sun Jun had come over and flirted with Ha-Jin. Fearing that Hari might be hurt by the revelation, Ha-Jin quickly covered her sister's mouth with a sussy banana. Later that night, Hari reassured Ha-Jin that she had moved on. She no longer held on to the past and only wanted Ha-Jin to be happy. Encouraging her to embrace her feelings, Hari urged Ha-Jin to go to Sun Jun. At that moment, Sun Jun was standing outside Ha-Jin's house, hesitating. He had been waiting for over 69 hours, torn between knocking and leaving. Seeing her again might be awkward, but staying away felt unbearable. In the end, he chose to walk away. Just as he turned the corner, Hajin opened her window, but she was a second too late. The next day, determined to stop running from her feelings, Hajin brought the shoes Hari had given her and headed to the company. However, Sunjun was incredibly busy. By simply listening to her colleagues, she pieced together where he was and ran after him, but she was always one step behind. First, she heard he was at a meeting. Then, he was picking up a business partner at the airport. She rushed there, but once again, she missed him. Unbeknownst to her, Sunjun had collapsed right outside the airport from pregnancy. That night, Hajin returned to the office where she overheard her colleagues discussing Sunjun's hospitalization. Heart pounding, she immediately ran out to find him, but no taxis were available. Just when she was about to panic, Shin Wook pulled up there with his Bugatti and offered her a ride. Unlike before, he didn't try to hold on to her. He had finally accepted that her heart belonged to someone else. When she arrived at the hospital, Hajin stepped inside alone. She stood beside Sunjun's hospital bed, heartbroken, gently stroking his face. Suddenly, he reached out, pulling her down beside him. This time, she didn't hold back. Wrapping her arms around him, she held him tightly, finally allowing herself to admit what she had felt all along. Sunjun gazed at her, happiness filling his eyes, before pressing a soft kiss to her lips, sealing the beginning of their love story. People love in different ways. Sunjun, usually so serious and brooding, was now smiling. Even when a bird pooped on his shirt, he laughed. When he was so distracted reading documents that he walked straight into an elevator door, he still smiled. And when he arrived at the office, he greeted his employees with unusual enthusiasm, because now he had Hajin. The next morning, Sunjun terrified everyone with his unusually bright smile. His colleagues immediately speculated he must have a girlfriend. There was no other explanation for why he suddenly seemed to love life so much. Meanwhile, Hajin panicked. When she entered his office to deliver some documents, she quickly reminded him, "Don't let anyone find out about us. I'll be too embarrassed." This, of course, irritated Sunjun. But oddly enough, the one who acted out was Hajin. All day long, she was practically glowing, dancing through the office, humming songs, and grinning like an idiot. Her colleagues didn't need any confirmation. Her actions screamed that she was in love. That evening, Sunjun took Hajin home, holding her hand tightly, unwilling to let go. Unfortunately, her younger sister caught them in the act. The girl gasped dramatically before yelling, "Mom, Dad, Hajin has a boyfriend." Both Hajin and Sunjun turned red instantly. And just like that, Sunjun was invited to dinner at Hajin's house. The atmosphere was surprisingly warm, and by the end of the night, they were close enough to take a family photo together. Later, as Sunjun returned to work, he unexpectedly ran into Hari. There was still unfinished business between them, so they decided to talk. In the end, they both chose to let go of the past. Hari forgave him, and he forgave her. When she returned home, she told Hajin about it. "Sunjun and I are friends now," she reassured her. "Everything's back where it should be." That evening, Hajin and Sunjun called each other before bed, chatting casually. At some point, Hajin absent-mindedly muttered, "I really want fish cakes." 5 minutes later, there was a knock on her door. When she opened it, Sunjun stood there holding a bag of fish cakes. Hajin was stunned. She had just been casually talking to him. She never expected him to actually show up. But instead of eating alone, she got into his car, and the two of them ate together. They spent the night talking, enjoying each other's company. At some point, without realizing it, they both dozed off. Everything seemed perfect, but perfection never lasts. The next morning, people from the magazine came looking for Sunjun, pressuring him to push even harder. If their magazine didn't succeed, he would be labeled a failure. The weight of the entire company rested on his shoulders. But Sunjun didn't want to burden his staff with this pressure. He feared they'd be overwhelmed and leave. Unfortunately, Jun-woo got wind of the situation and spread the news. Reporter Cha stormed into Sunjun's office, demanding an explanation. Sunjun had no choice but to admit the truth. He had only kept it a secret to protect everyone. But what he didn't realize was that his colleagues had poured their youth and passion into this magazine. If it was going to collapse, they deserved to know. Everyone was furious. They turned their backs on him, except Hajin. She offered her front part. She stayed by his side, cheering him on wholeheartedly. That's when Sunjun finally realized his mistake. He had been selfish, trying to shoulder everything alone. But despite their initial anger, his colleagues didn't abandon him. In fact, after learning the truth, they became more determined than ever, and they would fight to save the magazine no matter what. Then, finally, a stroke of luck. The magazine secured a deal with a famous celebrity who agreed to promote them on his personal page. This would guarantee high engagement just in time for their 20th anniversary celebration. Fueled by hope, Sunjun made a promise to Ha-jin. "If we pull this off, I'll officially propose to you." Ha-jin smiled. "I'll be waiting." But just when everything seemed to be falling into place, disaster struck. The celebrity was actually Andrew Tate, and he got caught in a drug scandal. His agency immediately canceled all his scheduled appearances, including the magazine promotion. The entire team was devastated. With their biggest opportunity gone, they had to find a new way to attract attention. That's when Uncle Kim suggested something crazy. There's a mysterious writer, Kang, whose books are bestsellers. If we could interview him, it'd be huge. The problem? No one knew who Kang was. Desperate, Sunjun visited Kang's publisher, only to learn that they had never met him. The manuscripts had always been sent via email. Sunjun left with nothing but an email address and a fragile sliver of hope. In the meantime, the team prepared for the worst. If they couldn't secure a celebrity, they would rely solely on the strength of their content. Everyone pushed themselves to the limit, working late into the night. Seeing their dedication, Sunjun took it upon himself to order food for them all. Despite the exhaustion, the team was at their happiest. Even Ha-jin had grown. Her first article received high praise from reporter Cha. Finally, after weeks of effort, there was nothing left to do. The magazine was sent for printing. Now all they could do was wait and hope for a miracle. Knowing they had given it their all, the team decided to reward themselves with a night of celebration. They reminisce about their early days, sharing memories of when they first joined the magazine. If this truly was the end, at least they would go down together. That night, no one went home. They stayed at the office, drinking, singing, and laughing. Everyone, except Sunjun. He sat alone in his office, lost in thought. Ha-jin found him there, quietly taking a seat beside him. Sunjun let out a tired sigh. He had done everything he could. Now he just wanted to rest, just for a moment. So he leaned his head against Ha-jin's lap and finally allowed himself to sleep. And then, the long-awaited day arrived. The Most Magazine 20th anniversary celebration. As the ceremony unfolded, one of the biggest announcements of the evening was about to be made. The introduction of the new second-generation director of the magazine chain. At first, Ha-no thought Junwoo would be the new director. But when the announcement was made, everyone was shocked. The new director was none other than Uncle Kim, a seemingly ordinary man but a descendant of a wealthy tycoon. Meanwhile, just before the ceremony, Sunjun received a reply email from Kang. He went to the meeting place, eager to show his sincerity and wanting to cooperate. However, what he didn't expect was that Kang's true identity was Shin-wook. Sunjun was stunned. He had never imagined that the famous anonymous writer he'd been trying to contact was the same man who once fought him over underwear. Initially, Shin-wook had no intention of revealing himself, but the persistent efforts of Sunjun and the Most staff moved him. In a surprising turn, he agreed to let Sunjun publish an exclusive article about his identity in the magazine. However, Sunjun sensed that Shin-wook had kept his identity hidden for personal reasons, likely due to past pain. Understanding this, Sunjun ultimately chose not to publish the interview. But when the first issue of Most was released, exclusive pictures and details about Shin-wook were printed. Confused, Sunjun investigated and discovered that Shin-wook himself had requested it. The colleagues were still reeling from the revelation about Uncle Kim when Shin-wook's appearance in the magazine sent further shockwaves. They couldn't help but marvel at life's unpredictability. Sunjun attempted to contact Shin-wook but was met with silence. The hotel informed him that Shin-wook had already checked out. It seemed Shin-wook had done all this just before leaving, but before his departure, he left a gift for Ha-jin. If Sunjun was no longer troubled, then Ha-jin wouldn't be sad, and making her happy was enough to give Shin-wook peace. He planned to return to America and live with his adoptive parents. Before leaving, Shin-wook didn't visit the newsroom in person, but made a video call to bid farewell. He remembered each colleague's quirks, habits, strengths, and weaknesses, thanking them for the time they had spent. With that, he said his final goodbye. Thanks to Shin-wook's story and the team's relentless efforts, Most regained its position as the #1 magazine. Uncle Kim, delighted by their success, treated everyone to a luxurious meal using his golden card, celebrating their victory. However, As the celebrations ended, responsibilities called. Ha-jin had to return to the aid management room, and Sun-jun was summoned back to headquarters. That night, the two took a walk together. Sun-jun had once promised Ha-jin that if he succeeded in reviving Most, he would propose to her. But now, he felt it best to first settle at headquarters, complete his work, and then return with the perfect proposal. Ha-jin believed in him and vowed to wait, no matter how long it took. Sun-jun wanted Ha-jin to accompany him to America, but the K-drama writers had other plans. The writer of the children's stories Ha-jin had interviewed recognized her talent and invited her to join a prestigious story-writing team. This was Ha-jin's childhood dream, and excitement filled her heart. Sun-jun, realizing her passion, encouraged her to pursue her dream instead of following him. Though hesitant at first, Ha-jin ultimately decided to stay and dedicate herself to storytelling. She knew that to be truly worthy of Sun-jun, she had to forge her own path. Understanding her feelings, Sun-jun gave her a ring as a promise, assuring her that he would return in a year to propose properly. With his support, Ha-jin's confidence soared. Her friend Hari also encouraged her decision. For the time being, Ha-jin and Hari would be apart, as Ha-jin joined writer Kim's team to focus on her work. The night before her departure, the two friends reminisced about their past, grateful for their unbreakable bond. The next day, Ha-jin took Sun-jun to her new workplace, ensuring he would know where to find her when he returned. Before leaving, Sun-jun asked Ha-jin to write often so he wouldn't feel lost without her. She agreed. As the months passed, Ha-jin flourished. She became more vibrant, filled with an infectious love for life. Her writing style was distinct, and despite her young age, experienced writers recognized her talent. Every time she received praise, she eagerly called Sun-jun to share her joy. Though they were apart, they remained close through video calls and shared meals. However, one day, Ha-jin couldn't reach Sun-jun. His phone was busy, and when she texted, there was no reply. Worry consumed her. Had he overworked himself and fallen ill? Her imagination ran wild, picturing him bedridden with a dead phone battery, alone. Then, in the most unexpected turn of events, on a rainy summer day, Sun-jun appeared before her holding an umbrella. Overwhelmed with joy, Ha-jin ran toward him, ignoring the rain. Sun-jun rushed to cover her with the umbrella, and they embraced tightly, ending the long-distance chapter of their love story. Upon his return, Sun-jun had taken on the role of editor-in-chief at Most, while the former editor-in-chief was preparing for marriage. Meanwhile, Hano and Junwoo, now deeply in love, had chosen love over wealth. Hano, once fixated on money, realized that true happiness lay in Junwoo's kindness. They planned to marry that year. Hari had gone to college and started her own hotel business. She also had an admirer, a younger boy whose pure feelings both annoyed and touched her. As for Shin-wook, he continued writing, drawing inspiration from his travels. He still kept the wool hat Ha-jin had gifted him, cherishing the memory. Ha-jin had finally earned enough to buy a new printer for her father, bringing her parents to tears. They realized their eldest daughter had truly grown up. In turn, they returned their savings meant for her wedding, which made Ha-jin cry with gratitude. She understood that family love was the most sacred and noble of all. After relentless hard work, Ha-jin's stories were published, making her dreams a reality. Her joy doubled when Sun-jun finally proposed, this time with a headband and a wedding flower personally woven by Hari. On her wedding day, Ha-jin stood beside Sun-jun, the most beautiful bride of all. If life were a movie, some would be supporting characters, and others the main ones. But in reality, everyone is the main character of their own story. Every experience, every person we meet, leaves us with valuable lessons. So let's cherish the present and those we hold dear, because life, much like a film, is all about the people who shape our journey. And so this story ends, but the journey continues. So don't forget to hit subscribe and see you in the next video.